Good afternoon, folks. How we doing? Good. It's a wonderful Monday, a little warm outside for you, I hope. So welcome. This is our session that SOURCE puts on annually for the MPH students around community involvement. And our work today is really to help prepare you for community engagement while also dispelling some myths you might have heard about Baltimore, as well as providing some tips for engagement that can be authentic and very engaging. So we are really thrilled to have this opportunity in this space. As you likely recall during your orientation, we really set the stage by having the first day, Dean McKenzie was talking about how important it is for our School of Public Health to be engaged in the community, particularly here in Baltimore. You heard from our school's historian about that ongoing relationship, and we spent some time talking with you about SOURCE and some of the student groups we work with and our commitment to community as well as social justice. And so today we have 6 fantastic panelists that are students that have been engaged with us, faculty that are very engaged with community work through service learning courses, their research and practice, as well as a few of our community partners here in Baltimore. And so we're going to do just a couple of introductory remarks before we dive into the meat of it. I do want to have the opportunity to also introduce our SOURCE team. I'm Mindy Levin. I am joined by our Associate Director, Tyler Dareth. Tony Bridges, who is one of our Assistant Directors. Tony. Kiala Jacques, who is another Assistant Director in our office. Vanessa Pinkney, who is our Administrative Coordinator. And Ezat Shahade, who is our Communications Specialist. Some of you have also met Glenn Ross, particularly if you participated in one of our 3 SOURCE East Baltimore bus tours last week, and you recall him speaking at orientation. Our team also consists of a few more people, and a few more people that are sitting in this room, likely. We are currently recruiting for several student positions in our office. And so if you are not already subscribed to our SOURCE Weekly Service Scoop to see those postings, we'll encourage you to take a look. We hire a whole range of positions that support our office. Caitlin can tell you about that as well, because she was in that seat last year. And then, of course, we'll share some more information about our student governing board members that are a part of our team. But at this point in time, I'm actually going to turn it over to Kiala Jacques, our Assistant Director, who's going to be our MC for this session today. So, Kiala, join us.
I wasn't expecting a round of applause, but I'll take it. So thank you. As was shared, my name is Kiala Jacques, and I have the pleasure of being the the Assistant Director for Academic Service Learning. I almost made myself a dean there. That's not what I want to do. So it's my pleasure to invite you to this session to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about SOURCE and the ways that we can partner with you to get you involved in the community by dispelling myths and providing you with a few tips. So as Mindy shared, the team is here to support that connection. You've seen our faces now, so when you see us in the hallway, please speak. We expect that of you. Yes. And if you ever just need a hug, come on down to our office on the first floor. We're located in W1600 in the Dean of Student Affairs suite with the other Student Affairs office that supports student advancement and development. So please feel free to stop by. As your MC, I have the pleasure of introducing you to some amazing humans in their own right who have partnered with us in various ways to get involved in the community. But before we do that, because I am the MC and I have the mic, I have to do a couple of commercials. So I want to tell you a little bit about service learning and SOURCE's mission. Our mission is to engage the Johns Hopkins University Health Professional Schools and Baltimore communities in multiple beneficial, if I slow down I can say it, partnerships that promote health and social justice. And so we do this by actioning our values. All of our programming, the way that we partner, the way that we connect with students and our other stakeholders of community and faculty members happens through these values. We focus on reciprocity, on justice, on service, and in collaboration. One of the main ways that SOURCE has been successfully actioning these values over the years is through helping students engage, and faculty as well as community, in service learning pedagogy. So service learning is defined as structured experiences that enhance the learning through service. So we have the relationships with community partners that we develop, and through those relationships we identify what the needs are and partner with faculty and students to meet those needs in a learning environment, so that ultimately, your opportunities in the classroom are enhanced through meeting community-identified needs. You'll be really excited to know that there are a number of courses that have service learning pedagogy embedded in them, and thus a part of your course is getting involved in the community. You'll also be excited to know that a number of these courses will help you accomplish your practicum hours. So this is just a short list. There is a session that will take place later in the month to inform you about these courses further and opportunities to acquire your practicum hours through service learning, be it in a course structure or in a different structure. SOURCE is here to support that process. So now that I've given you that connection to why we're in the room, right? We can talk a little bit more about how that's happened. How has SOURCE partnered with our stakeholders to ensure community engagements? How are students navigating the realities of Baltimore and being of service in their time here at Johns Hopkins? Well, this panel will give you more information on that. So I'm going to allow them to do brief introductions, not only to tell you about their roles in their various organizations or within the institution, but how they are partnering with SOURCE. So, Mariam, I told you you didn't have to go first. We're gonna start on the opposite end with Ahmad.
I don't know, did I just press something or just start talking?
Okay.
All right, great. Good morning, my name is Ahmad Collick. I am a community school coordinator with Child First Authority, and I'm working out of City Springs Elementary Middle, which is fairly close to where we are right now. I work with parents, I work with our staff, I work with teachers and students with a litany of issues regarding barriers to coming to school and anything else that might entails. Last year we partnered with SOURCE. We had a SOURCE Service Scholar, and we also partnered them with projects throughout the school year, which evens where Vanessa comes in and she brings us wonderful school supplies at the beginning of the school year, which is like very helpful to us. And we're also trying to find new ways to points of partnering as well. So I'm really excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jia Ahmad. I am currently a policy analyst at the Bloomberg American Health Initiative, but I think I'm on this panel because I used to be an MPH student, so I graduated last year, and before that was a medical student at Johns Hopkins. So I have had, I've been here for a little while, and I have worked with Baltimore Harm Reduction Coalition and Bridges, which is a coalition that is working for overdose prevention sites in Baltimore, which are also known as safe injection or safe consumption sites. And last year, SOURCE was generous enough to kind of fund or support my work with Baltimore Harm Reduction Coalition.
Okay. Hi there, I'm Terry Powell. I was just checking your slide. I'm associate now. You guys got to update your slide. And it's not that new though. It's not that new, guys. We're like 2 years in. Sorry, I digress. Okay, so Terry Powell, I'm an associate professor here in the Department of Population, Family, and Reproductive Health. I've partnered with SOURCE in a number of capacities as well. They've helped me make, actually, on that previous slide, 2 of those courses are mine, and both of them are service learning. I was a service learning fellow. I don't think I have the right title, but to really, SOURCE helped me think about how to make my courses service learning. And I also do community engaged research. So I partner with a number of local organizations in the research that my center does. I'm a part of the Center for Adolescent Health here on the 4th floor. And also, our center serves as a lead agency for a community school, Commodore John Rogers, and our community school coordinator, similar to Ahmed, has partnered with SOURCE. A number of students on the medical campus have gone to volunteer, served as reading buddies and tutorers, Spanish translators. So SOURCE has really been a resource for helping connecting resources to the schools in which we partner.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Dean. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Epidemiology here at the School of Public Health. I'm on this panel, at least I think I'm on this panel, because I was a SOURCE Learning Fellow as well. And last year I had the pleasure of working with Kiala as well as others to develop a course called Power, Privilege, and Public Health. I'm wrong. It was 2 years ago. Now I think about it, it's 2 years ago. Power, Privilege, and Public Health in the United States, which is a course that helps examine the ways that public health has been both helpful and complicit at times in creating some of the disparities and health disparities that we see. I partnered with Men and Family Center, which is a source office partner, to develop that course, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And just a shameless plug, it is being offered fourth term this year if anyone's interested.
Will this be the first year? I'm sorry.
No,
I'm just gonna
nope,
write it
this
down
is
for my
this is
students.
the second time it's being offered.
Got it?
Yeah.
So my students, sorry.
Okay, awesome. My name is Caitlin Viccora. I'm a second-year MSPH student in the Department of Health, Behavior, and Society. And as Mindy mentioned, I was a source programs assistant last year, and the programs I helped support were our HIV counseling and testing program. So that means students from the School of Public Health, the School of Medicine, and the School of Nursing acted as HIV counselors for 3 community sites. And then we also have a program called the Identity Clinic, which helps returning citizens find their identity documents. So it helps them navigate through that process. And we partnered with a community partner called Living Classrooms for that. So those are 2 ongoing programs that are available if you're interested in volunteering. I also took both of Dr. Powell's classes last year, so I can definitely speak to sort of the service learning component and how important it is.
Hello, my name is Mariana Izraelson. I am the Executive Director of Shepherd's Clinic. I am also a Source Community Fellow here, very happy to be. And we at Shepherd's provide health insurance for the uninsured for free. So we serve in a capacity in the community in which individuals that do not have insurance or are under insurance, or individuals with Medicare that cannot afford Part B and Part C receive care from us 100% free. We have partnered with Source several times. We have had several partnerships and practicums, and we are a great source for learning in the community. So the students that come to Shepherd's Clinic really learn a skill, and they really get to demonstrate what they have learned in the program and really implement it. So Shepherd is more of like an implementation center in which they can really demonstrate the skill they have learned in this school.
So I know that you haven't heard the tips yet from this panel, but can you agree that they're a dynamic group of individuals? Can we give them a round of applause? Have a set of questions. We'll take about 40 minutes to talk through them, and I know that you're going to have burning questions. So please write them down. Once we finish talking through our questions with the panel, you'll have the opportunity to use mics on either side of the room to share your questions to the panel, and they'll go from there. Please use the microphones. However, we are recording this for those who can't be present, and we would love to hear your question. So that being said, let's get started. Many of our students come to Baltimore with preconceived notions about the city from shows like The Wire on HBO, or maybe from things that they've read in the headlines, including the Baltimore uprisings. So will you share your lens of Baltimore in ways students can develop their own lens versus what they've seen in the media? This question is open to anyone on the panel. Feel free to answer all or just a few of the questions.
I can go first. That's okay. I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. It's the only place I've ever called home. And I would say there's truth within those stories. There's underlying effects that bring the uprising to be. There's stories in The Wire that bring The Wire to what makes it a reality. I would say maybe it's a one-sided story. There's avenues that was not explored. There were stories that weren't told. But also, who wants to watch a show about the artscape? So it's not as compelling. That part of Baltimore may not be as compelling as the Wire storylines might be. But there are other storylines. Barry Levinson told his story of Baltimore in 5 different movies. There's many different filmmakers who tell their story and their depiction of what happens in Baltimore, Maryland. So I would say that there's truth to that. My lens may be a little bit different. I lived around the corner from the uprising, so I could actually hear it, which is amazing to recall in my mind. I could hear everything. We even saw Anderson Cooper drive on my block, so I was really hyped about that. But I mean, even with that, I mean, I'm talking to Roma people who are studying public health. Like all the uprising, the Wire in general, like those factors that contribute to them becoming successful or newsworthy was the public health factors that we're all here to talk about and discuss and study. That's my lens to it. Yeah. If I added something.
So, you know, you decided to come here out of all the places that you could have been in the world, right? And somebody told me a long time ago, like, you give and receive with an open hand. So you're going to get what you need. Well, you know, you're going to get a high quality education here at Hopkins. But this is a home for you for however long you'll be here. And so I would encourage you, you know, to think about what you'd want somebody to think about where you're from, right? So give the city a chance. I'm not from Baltimore, so I'm from Chicago, and I had seen The Wire, I had read Henrietta Lacks, all of that, like maybe much of this is before the uprisings, but I knew a little bit about Baltimore, and I still said, but you know, like, I'm also from Chicago, and I know the stories that come out of Chicago, and I love living in Chicago. I have good friendships. I know where to go to get the best Italian beef and the Italian ices and the fried chicken. Like, I know that cities have great things and horrible things. And so I would encourage you to go out, like outside of the confines of Hopkins and the shuttle, go to Artscape, go to like one of the neighborhood festivals and really meet people. Yeah. And one way that I've been able to do that for students is through my courses and through the research. So all of the folks on my research team, we're out all over the city all the time. In my courses, Caitlin can vouch for it, like, you know, students are like out, and because at the end of the day, we're all people, and everybody wants like to live in a safe place, and they want their kids to grow up and do well and be well. And so if we start with that basic principle, like, all the other stuff is sometimes just noise, right? Like, you know, be safe, you know, like, be mindful, like, don't walk down dark alleys at midnight, like, okay. But I really just think that it's a city, and it has city problems, but it also has city potential and city kids and city like families. And so if you think about it like that, this is a city that we're living in, and it's your home for a little bit. Get to know your neighbors.
I think that one thing to take into consideration is all the things that Baltimore has to offer, and in the media you get the worst, what would pay attention. A really good example, and I tell my friends all the time, during the uprising, it was blown up to proportion. I'm not from the United States. My mom lives in Bolivia. The day of the uprising, where things were really bad, my mom, I live in Parkville, Maryland, really far away from here. My mom called me in tears. My mom in Bolivia called me in Parkville in tears. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "You're burning." And I'm like, "What? Am I where? What do you mean I'm burning?" And this is how out of proportion things got. You know, I was in Parkville. My friends live 2 blocks away from the uprising. It wasn't nothing like it was projected to be. And that's what you're gonna learn in Baltimore. There are millions of things here to offer. They're beautiful. It's a really nice city. There's so many things to do. And you will learn to navigate the good, the bad, and the ugly. It just happens where you are. When you go on vacation anywhere, it's the same thing. Before you go on vacation, you do research, you find out what to do, you find out what things there are. I think what Baltimore has to offer also is the many, many organizations that are here to do really, really good work. And you will see all the options and partnerships that you have to do the work that you came to the School of Public Health for a reason. You know, you wanted to do well in the world. So this is a city that really will give you an opportunity to give your choice, because there's gonna be a fair later on, and you're gonna see all the organizations that are dying to get your help. And so there's a lot of potential in Baltimore to do a lot of good work and to give to the city that is welcoming you, and with this beautiful school as well.
Okay, so I see laptops out, which means you're taking notes.
Maybe.
I don't know if you caught all those gems. I'm gonna share with you what I took note of, but hopefully you caught some as well. The first gem I caught was there's some one-sided stories, and in order to be good practitioners of public health research, we have to seek out additional points of data, correct? It's early, you'll learn this. You have to seek out additional points of data. So some of the ways to do that were shared on the panel: get to know your neighbors, get to know other community-based organizations, Get involved with the local culture, festivals, events. Read other books, see other movies. There are lots of stories to be told about Baltimore. Take a course. Take a course that gives you the opportunity to get involved with Baltimore. And I'll just do a shameless plug since we're doing shameless plugs and say that SOURCE has a series of modules that will tell you about the history. You're going to be here, as Dr. Powell mentioned, for about 10 months. And while you're here, you're not just a student, you're a neighbor. So if you're gonna call this place home, learn about its history, learn about the institution's history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because they're all parts of your student experience. Thank you, panel. Did you catch those gems? You took notes? I see you typing away. Perfect. We're gonna move on to the next question. So, panelists, you are each aware of the stories here between Hopkins and the community. Keeping that history in mind, how do you approach partnership activities in order to continue down a positive path?
So I'm Lorraine Dean. I'll jump into this one. Honestly, one of the great parts about working with SOURCE was actually how humbling it was and how much I learned about how to partner and truly partner with a community-based organization. So if you've come from the same types of institutions that I had come from, the model is that the instructor is this fountain of knowledge, and we are all here to quaff at this fountain and just drink and drink and drink, and the instructor will tell you everything you need to know. That's very, very wrong. What I learned through SOURCE is that, as Kiala said earlier, there are so many different points of data. Some of those points of data are you, the students, who can learn, who I as an instructor can learn from, and you can learn from one another. And the other source of data is the community partner that you work with and the community members that you'll see. In the course that I did, Men and Family Center worked really closely with helping us think through what should students be learning, what should students understand about Baltimore, what should students understand about the history. And what that required me to do is to really not have as much control as I thought I would have over a classroom. And that was really the humbling part, but to recognize and value that they have a different perspective, that they have a different type of power, that they have a different type of influence and a different contribution that anything that I could give or other students could give. So I would say, in summary, in kind of thinking about how to approach the partnership, approach it with a lens of true equality and equity, and recognizing that everyone in that partnership has value. And if you go back to that fountain analogy, instead of thinking about the instructor as the fountain, maybe we are all streams of the same fountain, and we're all drinking and all benefiting from that water, that resource that's there.
Yeah, I think that was really well said. And I think also, as we're learning so many new things here, I can speak to even like my first year last year. I was so excited by all the new information and all the connections that I was making. And as Ahmed mentioned, there's a lot of things that are rooted that cause a lot of the health issues that we see in the community. And I think there's a tendency to kind of come in and say, oh, well, I know exactly why this is happening and I can try to fix it. But that's not really what you're there for, right? Like you're there to support and provide. But I think it's important to remember that people are experts on their own experience, right? So you are not the expert here. And I think that I also had a pretty humbling experience of that as well. But that also just kind of reinforced why I was in public health in the first place, right? Like we're here to help folks, we're here to support. And I think really keeping that in mind, in a lot of different areas, I think is really helpful.
I'd like to take a potentially long-winded shot at this question. And I think, and by answering it, I'm going to actually subvert Kiala's intention and answer number 1 too. So I stayed in Baltimore because of the uprising. I mean, it was 2015 when I was deciding where to go to medical school, and I was so moved after what was shown on the kind of TV of these riots or whatever you want to call them, places burning. I mean, I lived in Mount Vernon, which is one of the places where supposedly the riots were happening. The National Guard was there. We had a curfew, and I would look out my window with my partner and see that the street looked exactly the same as it had the day before. But after that, community organizations that I saw, like really, I don't know, had moving, inspirational conversations about the deep pain that they had because of the death of Freddie Gray, because of so many things that had led up to that, and thoughts about how to move forward. And this was based in, as so many panelists are saying, like expertise, because they lived here. You know, that was the source of their expertise. And this is really different than I had come from New York City, where I like to think of myself as an activist, and I think the mode in New York City, at least in the places that I was in, especially in academic centers, was that if you have this privilege of an education, you are enabled to be a speaker on things. And so many people who were in charge of a lot of organizing activities were academics. Or kind of were transient, maybe members of that community, and not necessarily from that community. And so I was hoping that by staying in Baltimore, I would be able to kind of nurture a richer, I don't know, community organizing life by being more based in the community. And then I think what I realized by when I started like a school here was that engagement actually had to start in this institution. I think that, yes, it is a history, but it's also a present. And you, whether you would like it or not, by like being MPH students here, are affiliated with the university and do represent something really meaningful to like many communities in Baltimore. I think it's important to ask questions of yourselves and of each other and of the institution that are critical and engaged, and keep in mind why people perceive or like correctly interpret, right, Hopkins to be sometimes a pretty violent force, right? So like, why does the shuttle exist overlapping like existing transportation lines? Why does the Lyft program exist? Like, who is it protecting you from? The police force that Hopkins is starting, right? Like, who is it protecting you from? I would argue that it is from the community, right? And so the accurate perceptions that like Hopkins is not fully invested because it doesn't consider itself always a member of the community around it is true. And it's sometimes true in the way that you utilize these forces. I mean, I use the shuttle, right? But like those engagements are also community engagements, right? Like when you are saying that I need to be separate from the community in a certain way, that is also feeding this dynamic. So I would say that one way of like, I don't know, building a positive path or like looking forward to a positive like future is by starting here and like engaging your classmates, engaging your institution, resisting your institution when it's appropriate, supporting your institution when it's doing things that are appropriate, engaging in like service learning classes, finding mentors who are doing work that you think is admirable, but start here as well.
And I'd just like to add on too. One of the things that you really point out is that people have a valid perspective, right? That's different than the perspective that we have necessarily as an institution or students. So I do mostly cancer research, and I worked with some breast cancer organizations, and they'll say, you know, Dr. Dean, should we get involved in this cancer study that's out of Hopkins? And I say, you know what? Honestly, I understand your reservation. You have every reason to distrust this institution, given the history. And I think just acknowledging that they have a realistic perspective. It's not that, oh, they don't care about cancer, they don't care about the things that we care about. They do. They're just as human as we are. They care about their families. They care about their children. But there is their responses are reasonable. Their responses are valid. They shouldn't be dismissed. And it's on us. The onus is on us to think about how we approach communities and how we serve communities, given that very reasonable and valid perspective that they have.
Okay, gyms, did you catch them? Yes, I caught a few. Let me share with you what I caught. So first, seeing the community as a partner, seeing those lived experiences as valid and powerful. They are experts. Seeing the institution as a space for your organizing and action, holding it accountable. Understanding that people with expertise are the real superheroes. That lived expertise is their superhero strength. Knowing the history of this institution. So we may be talking about things that are slightly above your head because you don't know the story of Henrietta Lacks, which is the implication that Dr. Dean was making when she was talking about the cancer study. Maybe you don't know the history of redlining in Baltimore. Maybe you don't know about the way that the institution was involved in displacing families as early as 2014. So that's important information so that you can be aware when you wear that insignia outside of these walls and you enter into the community is engaging with that history when they see you, and they're holding you accountable to it whether you know it or not. Is that pretty accurate? Yeah. Brilliant. I'm really excited about these responses and eager to get on to the next question. So I'm curious, panel, what are some health challenges you have noticed through your work in the community? And how has Hopkins and the work done in community-based organization help overcome those challenges? Or perhaps put a significant dent, maybe not overcome?
Yeah, I think overcome is a little ambitious. It's that wording. So I work with adolescents, and some of the big issues that we've been working on as a center. So we look at substance use and substance use prevention, families affected by substance use, sexual and reproductive health. So, and that includes like coercion and when timing births and pregnancies, and also food insecurity and thinking about where folks are, how young people, how the system doesn't necessarily set itself up for young people to be able to have healthy foods all the time in transportation. So a lot of if you, again, I think that I love the team that I work with, and I'll say that we are all trying to be responsive to what's happening in our city, right? So we have a community advisory board and a youth advisory board, and they really help us, they keep us honest, right? Like we came here we're researchers, we have things that interest us, but really, if our hope is to always make sure that young people are able to successfully make it through adolescence and thrive and whatever that means to them, we need to kind of make sure that we're addressing the issues that are important to them. So what Hopkins and the communities are doing. So there are a number of spots in the school that are doing a lot of big things. So the Bloomberg American Health Initiative, one of the primary arms of that research is threats to adolescent health. And they've been really instrumental in involving young people and helping think about solutions. So one of the most recent ones, they just had a panel, a symposium here, and we're because everybody's oh, maybe we get food trucks, or how do we make sure that young people are eating all the time? And really, this really becomes an issue over the summer when kids are not in school, but then it also becomes an issue when kids are in high school, right? So I don't know what you remember about high school. I feel like I lived on cheese fries every day at lunch, but if that's not always an option in a number of our schools, the kids are I don't like the lunch. So how do we make sure that folks aren't just stopping by and living off Cheetos and Pepsi, right? So trying to be creative and also trying to figure out what policy levers do we need to press, right? And I think that this is where the partnerships between young people and community serving organizations and professors here who have all different types of expertise and connection can really put the best ideas on the table and figure out how do we actually do this, right? We can be in a room for hours throwing ideas at a wall, right? Writing them up, putting them on stickies. But really it takes the whole team to make it happen. Some other stuff, I don't know if you've heard about it in the news, a couple of, maybe about a year ago, some folks with our center, we've been partnering with the Baltimore City Health Department. So we had a big grant offering evidence-based teen pregnancy programming in schools. It was through the Office of Adolescent Health. So in partnership with our faculty and the Baltimore City Health Department and some of the schools we're working with, we sued the federal government and won our money back. So again, I don't think that it couldn't have happened without, again, the partners all around, right? Everybody had to be involved. And I think just remembering that, right? It's not just the folks in this building who will make it happen. We can't. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the reach. We just don't. So making sure you're connected with so whatever the issue or the population that you're interested in, figuring out who are the stakeholders and how do we all get together and try to make good things happen. So those are some things that we're working on.
I think that Shepherd's Clinic is an excellent example for this question. So Shepherd's Clinic provides free health insurance to the uninsured, the underinsured, and subpopulation of Medicare. And so we are 100% volunteer driven. We have 7 staff, that's it. We serve 1,000 patients a year. We provide labs, medications, imaginable, we do it all. And the students from Hopkins have been key to our success. Now you would really wonder how in the world would that happen? Well, Shepherd's Clinic have never had an evaluation process, and we were very fortunate to be paired from 3 students from the School of Public Health that came to Shepherd's, analyzed our program, look at our data, how to create an evaluation process, how can we move forward, and they created a fabulous evaluation process for us. They created a patient satisfaction survey. So they had an impact that we have been trying to do for years, and they did it in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of short time, and it had a significant impact on us because it really allowed us to bring another layer of information to our grants, to our donors, to say this is the work the Shepherd's Clinic is doing, and this is fabulous because the feedback we're getting on our outcome measures is insane. It's fantastic. But without that, we could have not been able to demonstrate that. Another partnership we have in here is one of the students came to Shepherd's to help us create a primary care opiate treatment program. We at Shepherd's have tried for years to make this happen, and meetings and things happen. And so we were a dedicated student came to Shepherd's, help us, work with us to get us together, work with the doctor, work with our medical director, with myself, to really put into place. And now we have, for the first time in 33 years, a primary care opioid treatment program that gives treatment to individuals without insurance, labs, medications, and behavioral health. So there is a lot to do in the community where your impact could be quite significant.
Some of the health challenges that we notice in my work affect our attendance. So at City Springs, our chronic absentee rate is 43%, and I'm cringing just saying that out loud because I work very hard on it. And over the summer, we try to process it and see what were some of the reasons why kids were missing. And I think so far we are got 20 kids left, and I want to say 47% was health related. So that could be chronic asthma, that could be some type of chronic disease, or just sick often. A lot of our students come from public housing, and if you know anything about Baltimore and public housing, those aren't the best living conditions. So a lot of our students have different types of health ailments that affect them in a litany of ways, and often that means they do not come to school. And even though I have not partnered with Source or Hopkins Public Health on this issue yet, I do partner with other parts of Hopkins on other ways to improve attendance, and try to aim and figure out how to figure out health reasons why kids don't come to school, because I'm sure Terry could tell you too. Attendance is a big thing for all of our schools, and even just saying 43% out loud is making my heart palpitate. Because we partnered with Commodore John Rogers this year for Stratford 5. Stratford 5, we worked all year working with Hopkins, and we're working with Mike at Commodore and 2 other schools trying to improve attendance. And I want to say we worked our butts off, and it still went up. So there are certain dynamics there that aren't just incentive driven or barriers there. Like even for us, health was the main reason, but also home instability. Home instability includes gun violence. It includes transient population where they're not homeless, but they're moving around a lot. It involves somebody losing their job, domestic violence. And we do this every summer to figure out why kids are not coming to school. And those 2 are really big reasons that affect us in so many different ways.
Yeah, I think I agree. At least, and I've been trying to reframe my own speech, so it's not the community, it's our community, right? We are part of it, we live in here. These are the problems that face us, it's we and our. But I think housing instability
Big one.
is a real challenge. And the way that we worked with Men and Family Center during the course of our class to help provide an evaluation service, similar to what you were saying, an evaluation service of one of the programs that they have that actually will is a go-between essentially when people, for example, if their lights are about to get cut off, or if there's something, if they're about to face an eviction, they essentially can call, and Human and Family Centers knows the people in the office to be able to say, hey, this person is having a problem, here's what we're gonna do instead, or we're gonna recommend them to this service. So one of the nice things that students have is access to time, because the service providers out there doing the services, they're out there on the phone, so they don't always have the time and resources to be able to evaluate the program and package the program. Well, that's what we did with our service learning class, and we were using EPI methods, GIS, which is geospatial methods, all different types of evaluative methods to be able to develop and package the program so that it's something that they could then say, we deal with, I think we called it energy insufficiency or energy instability. This is a service that we offer, and then they were able to use that in a subsequent grant application to be able to build support for their work. So I love that partnership enabled a community organization who was already doing something really, really well, that enabled us to help them showcase and highlight and get support to continue to do that work. And I think that's a great example of how Source and how community organizations in Hopkins can partner for some of this work.
So I have to stop after that great Source commercial, right? To pull out the gems and share with you the gems outside of partner with Source means partnering with brilliant folks such as this. Some of the really great value adds that I picked up from our conversation is asking questions about root causes and then listening to the stakeholders. So I really appreciate, Ahmad, what you shared, making a connection between attendance and health, attendance and housing. Those are root cause issues that if you can get to the bottom of them, then education performance increases, right?
Yep, every time.
Thinking about university and student and community partnership to build capacity. So I really appreciate the way Mariana gave an example, along with Dr. Dean, of students building out resources for community-based organizations who are already doing really great work to be able to talk about it, to write grants, to receive more funds to do it, to build their capacity by having boots on the ground or expertise brought into their institutions. I also really appreciate the comment about end-user design for solutions. And I really think that's a valuable way for you to think about your framework for engaging individuals as you do work in communities. That, again, this community member being the expert in their lived experience and seeing their expertise as a starting point for thinking about interventions, right, and designing solutions. Yeah, those are the gems that I got. Did I miss anything? Probably so, probably a lot of things, but we have to move on. So the last question that I have for our panel is around tips. What tips do you have or would you like to share with students, especially those who are new to Baltimore and are interested in getting involved in the community?
Yeah, I can speak to that as the resident student, I guess. So I think that community involvement can look a lot of different ways. So I would say kind of find your niche, right? So we've mentioned a variety of different ways to get involved, whether that be through a class, whether that be through Source, and kind of like an ongoing program, or whether that be kind of like a one-time, helping clean out the closet at one of the organizations or something like that. So I guess find what you can give in terms of energy and time. And I know there's a lot of different, this is a hard year, right? You're kind of on the grind in terms of school. So it can feel really overwhelming to take on something else. But I would also say that my experience at Hopkins would not be the same without my community experiences. They're very intertwined for me. And I think that's the case of a lot of folks who have been involved in the community over their time at Hopkins. So I'd really encourage you to just, even if it's a one-time thing, and Source has a lot of different opportunities for that throughout the year. And then also there's obviously kind of the longer-term engagements. But also, find what you're interested in, right? Baltimore has a lot of different health issues, a lot of community partners working on really interesting things. So whether that be kind of substance abuse prevention, whether that be any type of kind of clinic work, like there's a lot of different avenues that you can go down. So find the avenue that's the most relevant to you, the most interesting to your work, and the thing that gets you excited, and go down that. But I would definitely encourage at least some involvement, because I think that is a really important part of your experience at Hopkins.
I'd say like listen first, and that's certainly been like a theme of this panel, but like make that concrete. Like that's like an abstract thing. It's like, what does that really mean? But like, for example, if you're in a meeting, offer to take notes, right? Because people who take notes aren't able to participate as much. So take that off like a community member or an organizational leader who might be doing that, and like do it. And like look for things like that in the engagements that you have to position yourself in a listener position so you can take in and then process and think about how you can best contribute, but like make room for others like actively.
I would say just jump off the porch. Get out there, find what you want to do, what are you interested in, and dig your teeth in. You'd be I've learned, so I lived here forever, like I said already, but I didn't know there were so many organizations that were doing some amazing things since I worked at a school, because literally every point of advocacy in some type of capacity points at a school, whether it's transportation, whether it's food insecurity, whatever it might be. So there are so many organizations. If you want to ride a bike, you like biking, go volunteer at Bike Collective. You want to be in greening space, you go to Parks and Rec. You go to Baltimore Green Space. There are many ways for you to find your voice, find your space, find your village, so to speak, of people who are not like-minded but also passionate around some of the things that you have some passions about. So jump off the porch.
I think I'd just add 2 related tips. One is, I'll say them and then I'll elaborate. Show up and be genuine, right? Like, so have integrity, right? Like if you say you're gonna be somewhere, be somewhere. I know that sounds simple, but I think part of, to your point, like we get to write the present of the relationship between the School of Public Health and our neighbors, right? So if you are unreliable and if you come like unprepared, like that surely doesn't help us move any further. So show up, like put your full self in it. And be genuine, right? I think we've talked to some of our students about this before. Nobody's asking you to be from Baltimore. You don't have to like know all the lingo or the spots, or nobody's asking that. But I think that like you bring something wherever you're from, like you get to bring yourself. You get to ask questions. If somebody says something like, "Oh, I didn't know, what's that mean?" Ask. Like I think it's okay to be fully yourself. If you don't listen to the same music, say, "Oh, like I haven't heard that. Like I'd love to listen to it. Have you heard this song?" I think that again, like when people are like people appreciate genuineness, right? Like people can, and I work with youth, so like youth like spot like BS like a mile away, right? Like they have no time for it, and so I feel like I don't even get the luxury to like fake it. But like I think that sometimes like we enter into spaces and we're like, "Oh, well, I need to be a Hopkins student," like, or you could just be the girl from the Midwest who also like, to jump rope when she was little, but can't double dutch. Like that's me. And so like, I just think that like being authentic and genuine in all the interactions allows people to see like, oh, okay, like maybe this big old place, I still like, maybe I got beef. I still am not so sure about Hopkins, but like, I'm okay with Vanessa. Like I'm all right with Ahmed. Like these are people who seem to like want to be here and I want to be here and we can work together.
Okay.
I'd say remember that you probably have a lot more to offer than you even be giving yourself credit for. I think that's another hear people intimidated. Like, well, what can I really do? I mean, you can take notes. Can you open up an Excel spreadsheet? Can you open up PowerPoint? Can you draw something? I mean, you probably have a lot more skills than you realize that you have that can be helpful to an organization or to the communities that are around you. Even if you can set up a doodle poll or when to meet for the community, what they call them, the neighborhood association that's in your area. Do that. So you have a lot to offer. Don't underestimate or think that you don't, or that you'll show up and won't know what to do. You'll find your way.
I love that as a final thought on that question.
And I do want to say the organizations will love to have you there. Love you. So just keep that in mind, that you bring much more than what you think. We adore our interns, our partners. If we could give them anything, we would, because they have a value that we cannot provide. We don't have the tools, we don't have the skills, we don't have the human force. So we need you more than you need us. So keep that in mind. We will love you. And it's very important to them.
So if you're looking for your long-lost family, community-based organizations need you, and they love you. Super thankful for everything that was shared, right? An affirming space, you have more to offer than you realize, and it's needed. A instructive space, listen, start with listening. There's lots to be shared, and you are someone who can advance things by listening. To think about seeking out your passions and getting connected to organizations and initiatives that are connected to your passions, right? There's something here for everybody. And if you don't know where to start, Source is here to help you. So let us do that part. We've been around for a little while. We can help you navigate the space. And then this concept of integrity, showing up, being genuine, being honest. Really simple, very foundational things that some of us were taught as kids, some of us are now learning as adults, will go a long way as currency for trust building amongst community relationships here. So this is the part where I turn it over to you. We have a few minutes left. If you have questions, please line up at one of the mics and share your questions, or you can raise your hand and we'll try to circulate a mic to you. So, questions? Oh yes, I'm excited. There's one right here.
Thank you all. So my question is, when I think of service learning, I think of this idea of praxis, which is kind of, combining theories that are, critical and interrogate systems of oppression with the practice and engagement with community around those systems of oppression. And I was wondering how much is that integrated? How much is that learning and that, engagement with the theory happening with community members versus it's happening amongst ourselves in these spaces? And if it's not, how do we bring both the practice and the theory and integrate that with people in a way that can lead to kind of some more, fundamental, rooted, radical social change?
I can answer on the examples that we have had with our partnerships. I think we have learned so much from the student that was placed at Shepherd's Clinic. I think that they were skills and sets that really were, I had never experienced service learning until Source. So to me, it was a whole different way to see it. I was like, what? I did 5 years of free labor as an intern in psychology forever. And, but here is very different. The student really brings a skill. The student brings the academia, it brings the knowledge and helps the community organization move forward. And I hope that answered your question in some way. The students have brought to us a significant amount of knowledge, and we learned from them, and we gave the student the opportunity to implement that knowledge on a site.
And to think about the ways in which a theory has practical application. So for example, we might use a health behavior theory or eco-social theory, a social epi theory, and then work with the community partner to say, where do you think actually what you see is fitting into this theory and where does it not fit in? And then how do we design our evaluation questions in line with what this theory says or the potential departure from that theory? So for, at least on the academic side, we try to integrate that and then work alongside of the community partner to show us what the application is.
And I didn't get like this idea of practice, like praxis. I was like writing this down, like, how do I fit that in my class? I actually don't know if my classes like directly deal with those issues. I know in my fourth term course, Caitlin was in both of them, we often had debriefs, right? Like we partnered with a high school class to develop Baltimore-based adolescent-focused case studies. And we debrief in our class about like some of the theories. And like one of the things I often said, it was just like, even if people don't know the theories, like their experience will tell, like they may not have the terminology. Like, so I will always quote somebody, actually, maybe from your group. One of the students, he was like, yeah, like the socio-ecological model, that's like layers of life. I was like, yes, it is. Like, that is exactly what it is. Like, we have all of these layers of our life, and like all of them are like influencing each other. And so we kind of talked about it like that. And so like again, I work with teens, and this to me doesn't mean like they don't know anything, but like I'm also like very cognizant of like, okay, well, I know what we do here. Like, I was in school for a long time, like doing all this stuff, but like introducing topics and like helping them map their lived experiences onto like what we know and about theories and about like systems of oppression or like ecological models. Like, it's always been my hope that like my students and the students that we work with in communities are able to like co-learn, right? Like, how are we using language to like exclude people versus like be inclusive? And so like, let's do more including, let's do more like thinking about what we mean when we say things, rather than like, like, oh, like, let me show you this like big diagram with all of these like big words. It's like, or we can just talk about your experience, and then we can figure out how to weave these topics together. So.
Yeah, that was my group that did the layers of life. Yeah, and that was a really awesome example for a lot of reasons, but also because we were working with 17-year-old high school seniors, and we wanted to sort of introduce the idea of the sociological model without kind of throwing a lot of jargon at them. So we literally kind of like started to draw it. And it's actually like pretty intuitive once you draw it out and you're like, this is how everything affects each other. And they were like, oh, of course. Yeah. Like, where I live affects like, my, personal health and things like that. So like, it's not as hard as I think we make it. I think we kind of like dress it up very kind of jargony, typically in academia. But I think, these are really accessible. Like, the reason why they're theories is because they're rooted in experiences, right? So like coming at it from there and just having a conversation about like how people live day to day, I think is a really kind of easy way to do it. And again, like if high school seniors can do it, I think that means like a lot of different folks from all different walks of life can be able to access and have those conversations.
And I'll just say that is some of the work that SOURCE does. We intentionally train faculty and community side by side to give them that grounded theory experience to carry into the work that they do, right? So we're talking about critical reflection. We're giving them tools and helping them understand the value of bringing that context into the critical reflection space. That's a part of critical service learning pedagogy. And so we're trying to exemplify for them both in action and in deed how that ease, as Caitlin pointed out, can be a part of the learning experience. It really just has to be an intentional approach. Yeah, great question. Are there other questions?
Hi, thanks again, everyone. I noticed that a few of you mentioned us being in a position to hold Johns Hopkins accountable. And I was wondering if you all had any examples of where you've seen that be successful and where have you seen that imperative show up?
No pressure, Gia.
So, okay. This is being recorded. Follow up with me after. No, I mean, I think, I think, so I think part of organizing so I think sometimes you see the change you want, right, in the world, and sometimes I think it's more subtle, and it appears in other ways. So I think, like, for example, like a couple, not this last year, but the year before that, when Hopkins first proposed the police force, there was a lot of organizing, a lot of it which was centered on the Homewood campus in resistance, right, to the police force, because I'm going to be like a little shady on the history. I was in rotations. Things were very busy. I was really overwhelmed. But anyway, like and that organizing, that initial organizing effort. So they had introduced a bill, is my understanding. That initial organizing effort was successful. Like the bill was withdrawn. There were like protests on campus. Like various schools, students got together, wrote letters, and sent them to their deans. And I think initially, so initially the bill was withdrawn. I think that was like a really powerful thing. I mean, and then it was reintroduced next year. So I think that, a lot of times institutions are more powerful than you are. But But I also think that there are other, like the act of resistance itself is like really important and powerful. I think I remember at the end of, so when I was in medical school, actually, I used to ask a lot of really annoying questions in a lot of different lectures, and I think there was a solid cohort of students who would pose some resistance, right? So when we heard things that were stigmatizing of like, the communities around us, and we heard various things that we thought merited resistance, right? We resisted, and often sometimes we weren't able to affect change in the institution. But then somebody came up to me in my third year at like this like reflection session that we were doing together. And I think I was sharing kind of like my like morose perspective on like my lack of success in kind of moving the needle. And she was like, I think she was like, I was moved by like hearing it, right? So you might have and she was like, by hearing 3 years of like you and your friends like putting forth these resistances, like, I think I will be a different doctor. It was actually a really moving conversation. It's not because I think like, I don't know, I'm special or did anything that way, but I think that you might have an audience where you don't expect it, right? And I think like maybe they're here. And I think that kind of staying optimistic is really important, and finding a community that'll care for you like is really important. I want to actually do a mini shout out for Kiala, who's been a really important source for me in the last couple of years thinking through these things, But I don't know if that answers your question, but I think I'll end there.
So I just want to add one small thing. So everybody has a story with Hopkins, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And most people in Baltimore, they don't see the separation between a hospital and a school. They just say Hopkins. Yeah. Johns Hopkins. They put an S after John, so it's Johns Hopkins, right? That's everybody. Like it's regardless. Like it's in every. My mom worked at the hospital. My wife got her master's from the School of Ed. Everybody is some type of way connected to Hopkins. So I think holding them accountable to each person might look different, but I would say the same way there's myths about Baltimore and things that have been portrayed and what we know about it, it's the same way for Hopkins. There are people in Hopkins who I have relationships with where my relationship with them is not what someone else may say their relationship was, how they built it. Not to say their story is not valid or it should not be accepted or say that it's a true, but the experience that I built with Source or whatever department I'm currently working on a project with is what I hold to. And even with that, if I come across something where I feel like it doesn't align with the organization I'm working with or the benefit to the families that I'm working for, then it doesn't work for me. I haven't had any problems yet, though.
Yeah. For the sake of time, we have to draw an end to this panel, but haven't they been marvelous? Can you give them a round of applause? Heard about a lot of opportunities, a lot of ways to get connected and involved. And in case you haven't, since you have your laptops out, go ahead and open an email, address it to source@jhu.edu, and ask to join our scoop. It's the best way to find out what opportunities are pending. It's the best way to find out who amongst our team is available to meet with you to help you navigate all of those opportunities. And it is the best way to get involved, shameless plug, here we go, in some of the other opportunities that need your voice and expertise. So we are accepting applications from your cohort for our governing board. We value community voice and action alongside the work that we do, and would love for you to join our leadership structure, help keep us accountable, and also help keep us moving the work forward. Applications are due next Sunday. Just want to highlight that big giant red date there. So go ahead and send that email. Let us know that you want to complete the application. You can find it online. And finally, you can get involved in a few other ways. So we have a drive that's happening. It just kicked off, and Ahmad mentioned the value add that it brings to his organization. So our school supply drive is underway. We would love to see your faces again to ask more questions about our programming. We have an info session, a source info session on the 31st. Lunch is provided, and you have to RSVP so that we can do our due diligence not to waste food. And finally, we want you to get involved in finding out more about the ways that you can engage with Source to move your practicum and capstone goals forward. So there's an information session that will give you all that you need to know. Mindy Levin will lead that charge, and we hope that you will be present for that. So scoop email, yes. Okay, done. I saw some of you hit send already. I love it. Join the governing board, yes. way to get involved? You already took note? Okay, somebody right there, send an application. I can see you. I can see you. And then, of course, you have the ability to reach out to us and join in the various programs and opportunities. If you're looking for a job, we are still accepting application for federal work study positions. Send us your resume. We'll set up an appointment. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, panel.